More on the crisis in Syria, let me turn to Afshin Molavi. He's a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Institute at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and a frequent guest on our program. Afshin, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So we heard from Nick about what the Russians are saying. They're saying this was attack staged by the British. And we also know what the U.S. and their allies are saying. They say they have evidence this chemical attack, in fact, happened. French President Emmanuel Macron went as far as saying they know, in fact, Assad was behind it. They have proof. Here's my question to you. Why would Bashar al-Assad do this to his own people, knowing the international community is going to point the finger at him immediately? What does he have to gain from this?
You know, it may well be linked to something that President Trump said 2 weeks ago. And remember, President Trump said 2 weeks ago that it's about time that we start getting out of Syria. I'd like to move our troops out of Syria. Look, I think Bashar al-Assad, along with Vladimir Putin, have realized that they've won this battle. This battle is basically over. There's some holdouts, and this holdout in Duma was a particularly stubborn one, right? And it's important to remember here, Asya, that the chemical attack that took place in April of 2017 that led to the U.S. reprisal, and this chemical attack, these were not the only two chemical attacks in the Syrian theater. There have been more than 24, documented attacks in the Syrian theater. So this is, part of the war that Assad is perpetrating. But I get your question. It certainly does raise questions. I mean, why would you do something like this when you know there's going to be this kind of reaction, et cetera? But maybe he just thought that with the president saying, I want to get out, here's a great way to, in his idea, it's just a horrible thing to think of, just to push out, these last remaining rebels by using this chemical. And it seemed to have worked. And that's the deadly arithmetic of this.
So going back to what the Russian military is saying, that it has proof the attack in Duma was orchestrated from London, the timing I find rather interesting because it comes after the recent poisoning attack on the Russian spy and his daughter in England. Any link or connection between these tit-for-tat accusations? Yeah,
I mean, it seems to be that, that particular accusation is particularly absurd. But having said that, what they're trying to do is really link it exactly as you said, to the case.
You accuse us, we accuse you.
Exactly. They're trying to do that. And look, they're speaking to a certain audience. The trouble is that you can't speak to individual audiences anymore because everything you say is immediately global.
Okay, so at the UN Security Council, one meeting after another, one resolution after another vetoed. Is it realistic to think that the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council can actually agree on a resolution, on a united resolution when it comes to Syria?
I think they could agree on a resolution that would be very general in nature about, all sides should refrain from the use of chemical weapons, et cetera, et cetera. But they will not agree on a resolution that would involve military action. So if military action were to take place, it would take place by the U.S.
fact-finding mission. Let's send a team to Duma and find out what went wrong and who's responsible.
Sure. And there are fact finders on the ground right now. The trouble is that the question is who controls Duma and how much access that they're going to get, et cetera, et cetera. But if military action does come, it will be the U.S., Britain, and France.
And you've got to wonder what's going to happen to the U.S. troops and what would happen if there was some kind of military confrontation with Russian troops on the ground, and where would that lead us?
That's right.
Afshin Molavi, thank you.
Thank you.
As always.